You don't traffic 1,000 children and only arrest 2 people. Think about that for a second. That line, raw, blunt, impossible to swallow, came from Representative Madeleine Dean, and it landed because it names the simplest, hardest truth in the Epstein story: something doesn't add up. If this was a sprawling enterprise moving vulnerable people across continents, who else was involved? Who moved the money that kept it running? And why are key financial records still hidden from the public eye? Madeleine Dean's amendment wasn't drama for the cameras. It was a procedural test with a moral argument built into it. Don't let appropriations dollars be used to shield the suspicious bank reports tied to Epstein and Maxwell from Congress.
For yielding, I thank you for your comments. I associate myself with your comments. And to the gentlewomen from Florida, thank you for your work on this for years. And thank you for just correcting a piece of the record. There's so much more to it than that. Mr. Chairman, I understand that you are upset that this lays upon our table. I wish it didn't. I wish people long ago. I would ask you to allow me to complete my statement. I think the gentlewoman a moment ago spoke to that nonsense. This lays at our table now. The victims were here today. I wish they didn't have to be here. But for you to suggest that we were somehow using them, these women came forward. Some have come forward in the past, some with the courage and the pain on their faces. It's so disrespectful that someone would say, well, doggone it, you didn't deal with it. People have tried to deal with it for a long time. I wish the Department of Justice had dealt with it. I wish Florida had dealt with it. I wish he had not been given that sweetheart deal. And I wish that the names had not been covered up of who participated. Remember, the Attorney General, she had the list on her desk, and then it evaporated. It is known who is in that list. This Department of Justice knows who's in that list. Mr. Trump knows a lot about what happened in this. Somebody's trying to cover it up. 33,000 pages that were released, we all know, are a drop in the bucket compared to what actually is known and has been investigated when there's 1,000 victims. It's not just 2 people who were culpable. We show no other predators. There's no other names being revealed. There's a lot of people who know an awful lot. There was tremendous depth of investigation. But I want to end with this. This is entirely about the victims. And you re-victimize them when you say, well, you didn't do enough, and you didn't do enough, and why didn't you do something that year? It's on us. It is on us to do something about it. We are Congress. And I suggested to you, she said, survivors will do it for survivors. Let's stand with the survivors. Let's not leave it on them. Let's not say, okay, DOJ failed, this administration failed, Congress failed. Why would we want to be in these jobs if we don't seek justice for victims so grievously harmed? Think if this was your daughter. I have 4 granddaughters. Think if it was one of yours. Would you be content saying, you know what? They didn't do enough 4 years ago, so I don't really care about this. This is entirely about the victims, and they have been lost here. I don't know why you sit contentedly allowing them to be lost. I ask for support for my amendment. I yield back to the gentlelady with great thanks.
She read the room like a prosecutor reads a ledger: follow the money, get the truth. That demand is simple on the surface, but enormous underneath, because those suspicious activity reports, SARs, are the kind of records that don't lie. They show transfers, patterns, and parties that can't be explained away. That's why Dean brought survivors with her to the Capitol steps, and why she said what so many people have whispered for years: enough is enough. The call for those SARs didn't come from nowhere. House Oversight Chair James Comer has formally requested Treasury produce the SRs tied to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, a move that signals the House wants to look beyond the sensational headlines to the ledgers and bank slips underneath. At the same time, Senator Ron Wyden and others have publicly pressured Treasury for the same material. Those parallel pushes from both chambers and both parties show this is no longer a fringe demand. Investigators believe the financial trail could reveal far more than names, it could reveal the structure and scale of the network. So why do SRs matter so much? Think of them as the breadcrumbs investigators use when a trail is cold. When a bank flags a wire transfer as suspicious, that report creates a traceable record: who sent money, who received it, when it moved, and sometimes why it was flagged. SARs can show patterns: repetitive transfers to the same shell company, sudden large payments to private accounts, repeated cash-like movements that don't match a person's stated business. In cases like this, financial records can point to intermediaries, financiers, and facilitators who never sat in the courthouse but who may have made the whole operation possible. That is why many lawmakers say SARs are not just useful, they are essential. But there are reasons these documents are tightly guarded. Banks file SARs under confidentiality rules designed to protect investigations, and the Treasury and Justice Department often restrict access to avoid tipping off ongoing probes. Those rules, intended to preserve law enforcement work, can also create an easy shelter for powerful actors who would rather the public never know where the money went. And where there's money, there's lobbying, influence, and political pressure, a combination that can delay or smother transparency. That's the messy human part of the story. Secrecy purportedly protects investigations, but secrecy can also protect the powerful. If the files never see daylight, we'll have official explanations and the public will be left with doubt. Survivors, tired of waiting, have not been passive. In the months since the public push intensified, advocates and survivors have begun compiling confidential lists of people they say were often in Epstein's world. Those lists aren't a replacement for verified evidence or properly subpoenaed material, but they're a powerful signal. The people most harmed by this system have little faith that institutions will do the heavy lifting for them. When survivors take it upon themselves to collect names and push the record into the open, it's a damning indictment of the system's responsiveness and a reminder that justice can't wait on polite bureaucratic timelines. Let's be precise about what's public and what isn't. We know Jeffrey Epstein pleaded guilty to state charges in 2008, faced federal investigations, and that Ghislaine Maxwell was later convicted for her role. Those are public facts. What is less public are the web of financial relationships that connected Epstein to clients, donors, and business associates. News reporting and oversight releases have suggested there were thousands of transactions flagged by banks that might be related. But names in SARs are not public by default. They typically remain confidential to avoid compromising investigations and privacy protections. That's the tension at the heart of the debate: transparency for accountability versus confidentiality for lawful investigations. Because public records are limited, the temptation, understandable but dangerous, is to fill the gap with speculation. The internet explodes with rumors about who may have been involved, which famous faces appeared at certain parties, and what deals were cut behind closed doors. That speculative chatter is part of the cultural feed, but it's not the same as evidence. So when we talk about people beyond Epstein and Maxwell, we must use careful phrasing: reports claim, survivors say, allegations have been made. That framing protects the story's integrity while making clear we are not suppressing curiosity. If the SARs are released, they won't magically confirm every rumor, but they will offer a factual map that either supports, refutes, or complicates those claims. That's why so many advocates insist on access to the ledger instead of relying on conjecture. Imagine what releasing those SARs could reveal. They might show repeated payments to accounts controlled by middlemen, transfers to shell companies in tax havens, or structured deposits designed to appear ordinary but that, under scrutiny, reveal a pattern. They might show which financial institutions flagged activity and which didn't, and whether banks followed up or merely filed a form and moved on. They might point to the financiers and enablers who never faced trial but whose money and logistics mattered. That's the difference between narrative and accountability. Narrative tells us what happened, while financial records give us the data to answer who made it possible. Again, these are possible outcomes, not guaranteed revelations, and the only way to know is to see the records. So why haven't we seen full disclosure? Part of it is procedural. SARs are protected, and agencies historically resist broad releases without court orders or specific waivers. But part of it is political. Releasing troves of bank reports could implicate prominent figures, embarrass financial institutions, and spark a public backlash that some officials may prefer to avoid. That's why Dean's amendment, blocking appropriations money from being used to keep sayers hidden from Congress, is clever politics. It doesn't pretend to rewrite law overnight, it creates a narrow budgetary constraint designed to make it harder for federal officials to dodge oversight without a clear court order. In practice, it's a pressure lever. If Congress asserts the public's right to see relevant records for oversight, the executive branch has less room to stall. Make no mistake, even a full release of the sayers won't be the end of the story. Records will need redaction for genuinely sensitive matters, and investigators will still have to connect transfers to actions. But the difference between a closed file and an open ledger is the difference between rumor and evidence. If the sayers show a trail of payments to accounts linked to third parties who were never prosecuted, that demands follow-up subpoenas, additional investigations, and possibly criminal referrals. If the sayers show banks repeatedly failing to act, regulators may need to consider penalties. That's not speculation, that's how financial oversight works when the facts are in front of investigators. We also need to ask, what kind of oversight do survivors deserve? The women and girls harmed by Epstein's network have been building lives from the rubble of violence and coercion. Many have come to Washington to tell their stories, not for vengeance, but because they want a system that prevents others from going through the same nightmare. Saying follow the money is not just a rhetorical flourish, it is a way to build evidence that could hold enablers to account and prevent future harms. Survivors are not the only ones demanding transparency. Members of Congress across the aisle have demanded it too, which suggests this is no longer a partisan talking point but a broad institutional concern. If you're asking what you can do, because this cannot be only a conversation in the halls of Congress, there are concrete steps. Share survivor statements, call your representative, and ask them to support oversight measures that seek relevant financial records. Press outlets can keep reporting on what the sayers might show and why they matter, and most importantly, keep the moral center visible. This is about the people harmed, not about celebrities or conspiracy-minded spectacle. Transparency protects victims, secrecy protects predators. That framing is true whether the records expose low-level facilitators or high-profile enablers. In the weeks ahead, watch for two things: whether Treasury produces the sayers to oversight committees, and whether Congress follows up with subpoenas or additional oversight if the production is partial or redacted. If the files come out and the facts are clear, we'll be having a very different conversation, one based on documents instead of hearsay. If the files remain hidden, the story becomes about why powerful systems keep protecting the same few. Either way, policy and public pressure will shape the next chapter. This isn't a spectator sport, it's a question of accountability. If you believe the survivors deserve answers, then do something small today. Share this video, talk about it, ask your friends to call their representatives. The reason the ledger matters is not because we want to shame people online, it's because we want an honest evidence-based accounting of how a monstrous enterprise could operate for so long. That's how you build systems that prevent future harm. That's how you make sure that you don't traffic 1,000 children and only arrest 2 people stops being just a line and starts to become a call to real action. If you want updates as the story changes, subscribe. We'll track the filings, the letters, and any release of documents and explain what the records actually show, not what rumor says. And whatever you do, keep the focus where it must stay, on the survivors, and on the truth that money can help hide. Transparency pulls that cover back, just as follows.